Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We're already a few minutes over, and we pride ourselves on being punctual. So first off, I'd like to welcome everybody here, particularly our folks in the audience out there. I'm Dennis Hayes. I'm the president of the Reston Citizens Association and several other things. I've been in and out of Reston since 1979, and I'm happy to be here. I would like to start off by thanking our Supervisor Hudgens, for helping to set all this up. And I'd particularly like to help the team of Goldie and Larry and Moira, who were able to kind of herd all the cats and get us together to get to these meetings. Yesterday I sat in the back, and so I know that it sometimes is difficult to hear. So I'm going to speak up as much as I can, and I'm going to encourage my colleagues on both sides of the table to also do that. And if you have something more than a quick comment, maybe to stand up so we can project and go back. As you'll notice, we've upgraded our cameras a little bit. This is being streamed live at this moment, so be advised you're on TV. So keep that in mind as we're going along here and everything. Those of you who know me know that I'm kind of an interactive guy. I can't stand sitting around in a room and hearing people drone on forever and ever and ever. So I'm hoping that we will have an actual fruitful discussion tonight with some back and forth. We very much appreciate the county officials for being here today. I have to tell you, our county officials, the guys that are in this room, are our favorite county officials. We do appreciate you coming here, working with us. We know that sometimes that could be a little bit of a chore, but the rewards we think are worth it at the end. And if I had one request, that would be maybe talk to your colleagues over in library administration and tell them they can talk to the public and survive along the way. So there we are. Also, speaking of the library, I have another meeting tonight to talk about the ultimatum we've been given to the Friends. So we will be finishing by 8 o'clock tonight. And so we'll get out of here. So we're going to have a lot of time to allow for questions from the audience as we go along. Maybe the first thing to do would be to do some introductions. As I said, you know who I am now. But why don't we go down here and then our friends from the
Sridhar Ganesan, Vice President of the Reston Association Board of Directors.
Andy Siegel, Reston Association Board of Directors President.
Larry Butler, Acting CEO, Reston Association.
Connie Hartke on the Reston Citizens Association Board of Directors.
Lynn Molston on the Reston Citizens Association Board of Directors.
Good. Oh, sorry, of course.
Dave Bowden, Director of Planning and Development at the Park Authority.
I'm Andy Dorlester. I am the Manager of Park Planning with the Fairfax County Park Authority.
And you two might as well just come up and sit at the table right away anyway, right?
Well, if you like.
Fred?
Sure, come on up. Come on up.
Tell them who you are.
Makes me nervous. Tell you who you are. Yes.
I'm Fred Selden, I'm the Director of Planning and Zoning.
And I'm Leslie Johnson, I'm the Zoning Administrator for Fairfax.
Okay. Excellent. Well, listen, I wanted to kind of start us off to get a framework because I do think, having listened to the conversation yesterday, we got to the points where there were areas where we agreed at the very end, and I'd kind of like to reverse that and find out those areas where we can have agreement right up at the beginning. The first thing that comes, of course, is why is this important? Why do we hear? Why do we care about all this? And very briefly, I should note that parks, open space, recreational areas, and these sorts of things bring a lot of benefits to the county and to the community. They bring a health, not just physical health, but also mental health. When you have good park systems, fewer people are depressed, fewer people have type 2 diabetes, babies are born better. I mean, all of this is statistically done, and not just in this nation, but across the world. Environmentally, parks are very important also. The trees absorb the CO2, the groundwater doesn't turn into floods, we have shade and pulling out the pollutants and these sorts of things. And lastly, of course, on the economic side, it's pretty clear that being near, the proximate principle, if you're close to a park, your property is worth more. And it goes right down the line in terms of economic activity and all of these things. I do want to take a moment. I'm going to read 4 things that come out of the Reston Master Plan. Those of you who've heard us in the past know that we sometimes cast a skeptical eye on the master plan, but there are in fact a lot of good things in there. And I'm going to read them If anybody has a disagreement with any of it, let me know now, or else I will assume you are in agreement with these statements. First one, the fundamental characteristic of Reston has been a commitment to preserve natural areas and integrate open space throughout the community. Page 8, paragraph 2. The next come out of the planning principles on page 10. The development will, W-I-L-L, will be phased with infrastructure. Next, high-quality public space will be required. And lastly, public participation in planning and zoning will continue to be the community's foundation. So, not seeing anybody throwing things at me or getting violently opposed, I'm going to assume that we all accept that, and I think that's a huge step forward, that we can accept all of these things along the way. Now, when we have these discussions, as mentioned earlier, I kind of get lost when people go into long discussions. So I'm hoping we'll have kind of pithy comments and answers and back and forth and again discussion. What I would ask everyone at the table and certainly everyone in the audience to consider is to ask themselves 4 things whenever any proposal comes up. What, where, how, and when? What are we talking about in terms of open space or an athletic facility or what have you? Where on that map is it going to go? How are we going to pay for it and afford it? And when is it going to be up there? Now, if you can answer all 4 of those, we have a project. If you can answer 3 of them, we have a proposal. 2 or fewer, we have a dream. It's nice, but it really doesn't mean anything. So I would ask everybody on all sides of the table, when you talk about an initiative or a proposal, please think of it in those terms. What is it? Where is it going to be? How are we paying for it? And when are we going to have it? So that is sort of my opening. I violated my own rule of talking a little too long, but I appreciate your patience. And I think we're going to take the first question, and we'll go down here. And this doesn't really pertain so much to the question of the 16 and the 13. It has to do with Reston as it's already been established along the way. And that is the status of funding on a 100 mil athletic facility. So I kind of throw that open for discussion and comment.
I'm happy to answer that for
Oh,
you.
good.
My agenda says that now before we answer questions, I'm going to give an overview of what the comprehensive plan recommends with regard to parks and recreation.
Well, okay, if
For
that's what it
Reston.
says, then that's what we'll do.
It says draft agenda, but I'm prepared to do that, so I think it would
You
be
go right
a
ahead.
good primer for everyone before we start talking about Parks and Rec. So, and I gave you the handout. It summarizes, it has excerpts from the comprehensive plan, the key points, the main things the plan is recommending. The main thing I want to get across is that with every new development that comes along with county is reviewing for Reston, we are using this guidance. We are applying the guidance and making sure that new developments are offsetting their impacts to the park and recreation system, park and rec needs. Reston-wide, there should be new parks and recreational facilities with every development. And in the development review, we're applying this guidance for the transit station area, for the village centers, and Reston as a whole. And in the transit station area, we're applying the urban parks standard for park space, which is 1.5 acres of urban park space per 1,000 residents, and 1 acre of urban park space per 10,000 employees. We also are expecting that development will offset the need for athletic fields, and the basis is in the comp plan. There should be 12 new fields to serve the Reston TSA. So every 2.2 million square feet of floor area that's proposed, we're expecting an athletic field. And if you're proposing a development that's a portion, then we're expecting a monetary contribution that can be used in the Reston area, according to the plan, to upgrade existing fields or purchase land and build new fields. We're also implementing other recommendations such as for public art, smaller footprint recreational facilities, playgrounds, sport courts, adult fitness, picnic areas, and so on. We also have the guidance for village centers and the overall area. I'm sure you want to know more about the TSA.
Well, it might be helpful,
Yeah.
some examples of how you have already done this.
Yes. So, to date, under the new plan, with all of the rezoning applications in the TSA that have been approved. We have commitments for 6.7 acres of new urban park space.
Okay.
So each development will have on-site park spaces. I have a map over here that people can look at later. Or we
How
can
big
pass
are
it
these
around.
parks? Are these like pocket parks or
These
big
are urban parks.
Can I
Which
can I
means
ask
what?
a question on that? Can you define urban park space, please?
Okay, so the comprehensive plan has in the policy an urban parks framework that defines what that means. There's a typology. So urban
Maybe
parks
you can
are
just tell us.
smaller. Right, I'm
Can you
going to
hear
tell you.
Okay,
She
so
barely
I asked,
can
my
barely
question
hear
was
you.
about,
to hear you.
so my question was urban park space. Can we define what it
Right,
is?
so the county's policy for urban parks, there's a typology of urban parks. There are pocket parks that are very small. There are common greens, which are neighborhood-focused parks that provide the kinds of things that you would want to see in a neighborhood in your residential uses. There are civic plazas, which are the kinds of gathering places you'd want to see in more commercial, busy types of places, transit-oriented places. There are recreation-focused parks, which meet recreational needs, athletic fields, playgrounds, sport courts, and the like. There are linear parks, which provide trail connections. So all of that is something that we want to see within the development.
Can you show us, maybe you have a map, so maybe you can show us where the athletic parks are going to go?
Well, the map that I have shows the approved rezonings and where the park spaces are that have been approved. And it's going to be hard for people watching online, and I can happy to pass this around.
Maybe hold it up so
Or
they can see.
let people look at it.
So where would the athletic park be then? Again, I mean, it's, all of that is great, everything is wonderful, but where is it? Where is the actual athletic field in the TSA area?
Well, I haven't gotten to that yet.
Okay, well,
So,
that's
so
what's been waiting.
so the 6.7 acres of new
It's
park space.
16.7 acres of
16.
new urban park.
Excellent.
16. And for all rezoning applications that are currently under consideration, that are still in process, plus the ones that have been approved, it's over 50 acres. So the park spaces are coming, little by little.
Show us where?
I'm happy to let you look at the map. It's hard to point out on a map of this scale for everyone to see, but we can pass it around if you like.
Okay.
So for athletic fields, which sounds like you'd like to know, the athletic field guidance says that, I'll stand, there should be one new athletic field for each TSA. So that's 3 fields, one for each TSA. We're working with applicants to try to make that happen. For applications that don't generate the need for a full-size field, we are getting proffer commitments. And there's a monetary contribution per square foot of development. It's $1.72 per square foot of development. To date, proffer commitments total over $10 million. So there's over $10 million for the county to use to upgrade existing fields in the greater Reston area. We're still working with applicants to try to get those 3 fields built on the ground. It's still in process.
Okay, but you
Can I
don't have
ask a
yet.
question?
Right.
Oh, sorry. Hi, my name is Lynn Molson. I just
Yes.
had a quick question. When you mentioned that there are proffers that are committed, are
Yes.
those proffers specific to Reston, or
Yes.
they are?
So
Okay,
these are
great.
developments in the TSA that the Board of Supervisors has approved that are committed to pay the county $1.72 per square foot of development with each occupancy permit. As the buildings get built, we'll get a check for square footage of that building will come to the county. So
Will
it
the
will be
county
phased
then
over
turn
time.
that over to Reston is my question.
No, they'll turn it over to the park authority.
But will be allocated to
Yes.
Reston?
Yes,
It's
it's
So it's not
specifically
gonna
written in
go
the
to
proffers that
another-
it's for Reston.
The proffers are very specific. It's to be spent in the Reston area.
Will any of them go to Reston Association fields?
That's something that will be worked out over time with RA. So the comp plan guidance is that the money could be used to upgrade existing fields at park authority sites, at school sites, and at RA sites. So as the money comes in, we'll be working that out.
Yeah, but
Did you,
written-
before, were you finished with your overview?
No.
Should we let her finish with her overview and then should we
A
go
little
with
bit
questions?
less, yes,
Yeah,
sorry.
I just,
There's a little bit left.
Yeah.
So the comprehensive plan guidance is for 12 new fields to serve Reston, or the equivalent of 12 new fields to serve Reston. So it's 3, 1 for each TSA, and then 9 for outside the TSA in the Reston area. That 9 could be upgrades to existing fields. And when you look at the capacity that an upgrade to synthetic turf and lights and an existing field creates, that means we need 12 upgrades. So that's how we will allocate.
Let's
it.
explain that a little bit. So our service level
Yeah.
standard for athletic fields countywide is based on a grass unlit field. So there's a certain number of hours that can be played on a grass unlit field. When you add synthetic turf and lights, obviously you increase the amount of play. So when you take that against our service level standard, a synthetic turf lit field or it could be oversized too, and it accommodates multiple sports, counts more towards our service level than one standard field. So that's the reason Andy's saying that.
Because you're looking at peak, I mean, for instance, Barron Cameron, that beautiful facility, I happen to live across from it. I ran through there this morning, nobody was there. I drove through it at 2, nobody was there. I came over here at 5:30 and nobody was there. It was hot, you know, it's the summertime. People are at work. So again, I'm just curious because I understand you're talking about extra hours when you light and turf a field. But really, we're talking about from 4 to 8 on weekdays and maybe 8 to 8 on the weekends, right?
It's
So-
a grass field. A
Yeah.
lighted field's open until 11 o'clock.
11 p.m.
Okay, all right, you gotta pick up a couple more hours and, go ahead.
And, well, and I have to tell you, I have a strong background where I fully understand why grass fields are difficult on our soil here for extended hours, and I appreciate that. Is the county looking at something other than ground-up tires, please?
Well,
Something
currently,
other than ground-up tires.
Currently, the county policy is still to use
Is-
crumb rubber, but we're
which
waiting
is
for the
ground-up
EPA
tires.
to complete their study.
They're not going to complete it in time. We just need to try something else in the
Well, I
meantime.
can just,
So,
right
all
now,
right.
the current county
Let's go
policy,
on
yes, we
schedule.
have done a lot of research, but the current county policy is still to use crumb rubber.
That's under
David, I appreciate
direction
it. If you could maybe give us
Director of
just
the
how
department.
that spells out on the hours
I
and the usage,
fully
that'd be
know all
helpful.
about it.
But we don't want to take up your time now.
Yes.
Yes, we'll give that
You
to
can send us
You
the
can
data.
send- you can send us
I'm
the
sure you
data.
have analysis that you can.
Yes, we do.
Oh,
That's how we
no,
have it.
yeah.
No, no, not on the rubber, I'm talking
Yeah.
about the hours.
Not on
Oh,
the
Maybe
rubber.
oh,
rubber
the
too.
hours,
On
yeah,
the
yeah,
hours.
oh, no, it's true, it's absolutely true on the hours. I fully support
About
you on the
60%
hours.
increase.
Yeah,
I've heard
absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about the Hunter Mill Road property?
Well, in a minute,
Okay.
but just, so Barron Cameron Park is a district park, I think, right? District?
Yes.
Right, so it's used by more than just Reston for
Well,
different
let's talk a little bit
sports.
about, so now you're getting into a whole different realm, which is the county's field allocation policy. So that's all based on numbers and user groups. It's not really based by area. So, and we have youth groups that cover multiple locations. So there, for instance, baseball here, Little League is Reston, Herndon, Little League. But it's all based on numbers. So if the numbers of children that are in the organization that's in Reston justify getting full use of a field, that's how the allocation policy works. So the Park Authority doesn't control that. That's controlled countywide through the allocation policy.
Oh, it's not historical use.
So the-
Not yes and no.
But,
Yeah.
so just Reston Association fields really need some help, so, to have more playing time.
Well, and that's one of the
So-
things, so we'll
Yes.
definitely, because land is a premium, so if it's already a field and it's gonna stay a field, obviously that's an area to put, that's the way the plan is written, is to put emphasis on those fields.
May I ask another question? Just this, if you'd help me understand what it means, adding capacity equivalent to 12 athletic fields. Now, I know there's supposed to be 1 at each TSA, and that is a full athletic
That
field,
is
whether
no-
it's rectangular or triangular, right?
Or
One or the other?
There was a 6 and 5, I think, or something.
But, so there's those, and I just don't understand where the space is going to happen when, for instance, there was a new apartment building made that's completely dog-friendly, but they weren't forced to create their own dog park. You know, they should have a little dog park. So I just, I'm wondering, what is the county going to do to force these things? And then what is the equivalent for the other 9? What does that mean?
So as David explained, the countywide standard, one field is one grass unlit field. If you add synthetic turf and lights, you get 1.65 fields. That's because you can play later, you can play until 11 p.m. You can play during and shortly after rain, and then you don't need to let the field rest during certain seasons to
Right.
let the grass grow, and you can play longer into the fall and start earlier in the spring.
And depending on the size of the field now. So one of the biggest changes in soccer in the last year has been that now the lower grade youth programs are actually regulated to play on smaller fields. So a larger full-size field may accommodate 2 or 3 smaller fields, so that up to the U11, U12 are now, they're mandated to play on the smaller size field. So you get more play,
Get more out
more
of
people
the
can play on the
space.
same size
Right,
field.
if you play, yeah, right.
Do you have?
And synthetic turf allows that because we can put the goals anywhere we want, and we're not worried about wearing out, we don't have to shut down the field because they wore out a specific area of the field.
So do you have a needs assessment projection over a
Yes,
period of
we
time
do.
that satisfies
Yes.
this? Well,
Yes.
is it something that you can
Yeah.
share with us? Do you have it? Anybody has it here?
It-
It's on the Park Authority website.
Yeah, it's on the website.
So-
Yeah, it's a
okay.
recently completed needs assessment.
Okay, they did do it, okay, all right. And it has all the information as to how you develop
Yes.
these requirements, okay.
And we, I'm pretty sure we have a task force report from the original comp plan change that details the athletic field, well, all the park piece, because we participated in the task force.
Okay.
So to go to.
Just, if I could just follow that thought. So you have commitments at this point from various developers along the way, either by money or space, correct?
Right, so
Right.
all the space commitments are, urban parks do not include athletic fields to date. The monetary commitments of 10.3 million, that's all for athletic fields, solely for athletic.
So those
fields.
are actual, already approved developments with
I
profits.
know, I know this is complicated, you guys are doing a great job with this, but my concern, going back to my earlier point, is the where and the when and the how and these sorts of things. And you have, it sounds like you have pieces of it, and that's great, and I'm happy for you and for us
Right.
for that. But my concern is we need all 4 of those to come together, and I think somebody wants to jump in here, so we'll let it.
Yeah,
No,
well, the point it's a good idea to talk about all those 4 pieces. All I'd like to do is to just remind people that Reston is a planned community. And the original plan for Reston talked about the what? About where open space, green space, didn't really define athletic facilities because it was common areas.
20 acres per 1,000 persons.
Some of which got developed with athletic fields. Talked about the where because there was a map. I don't know of anything that talked about the how. Because the Reston master plan was 3 maps. Transportation, land use, community facilities. Certainly didn't talk about the when.
So Fred, are you saying we should not
No,
move
no,
forward and
what I'm
advance
saying
anything, or
is-
we stick with the 62
No,
plan?
what I'm saying is Reston is a well-planned community.
Yeah.
And we weren't able, in 1960s or 70s, to answer all 4 questions. But we did collectively, the county and the community working together. We were able to have a community of Reston that today, I think.
That is
does-
exactly what we
does
want.
That's why we're
That's
here
exactly
tonight.
why we're here.
Absolutely.
Move
All
forward.
I'm asking is that we not apply a standard, particularly with regard to the how and the when, that's unrealistic.
Okay, but Fred, again, I'm not asking for all 4 for something that's coming in today, and we'll talk about 100 mil in a second here. There are projects and proposals that have been done in the past. I mean, the Wheelie station is built. People have been living in there for years. So presumably, there is something to show for that. Or am I missing something here? I think, yeah, we seem to have a problem in the back there. People have to move around.
So you just have to be walking around back there.
The Wheeling Plaza amenity is the plaza. It is a civic space, not a playing field.
Have you been there lately? What
I
is
have
this- what
been.
is the civic space that you see
Program
there?
there.
What is the civic space? Not gonna ask.
It is the plaza. The-
Well, what happens? What is the civic activity that takes place there?
We program a concert there every single week. A free
All
concert.
right.
With free
Trees, grass,
But
That's all great.
But for
That's
that, for
wonderful,
that
but it doesn't
TSA, there's supposed to be
address
an
the
I'm
athletic
just
field.
saying, that
All right,
was,
that's a
that
good
was
thing,
the part
love
of the
it, but it
design.
doesn't address the issues and the concerns that we have.
I don't think the plan was as specific as that. I think the target was to have an athletic field for each TSA. If you got two athletic fields in one TSA as an offsuit, that was allowed under the comp plan. So the athletic field was meant to handle the demand that was being created by the development in the TSA. It didn't have to land in the TSA because quite frankly, the task force was a little challenged with how do you put an athletic field, particularly if it's turfed and lit, right on top of a metro station. Now, the one place in the TSA that we did identify for potential athletic field was the Isaac Newton Square area, because again, that area had a low intensity of development, had more open space and more opportunity, particularly than an area like the Herndon Monroe Station, which is very, very constrained. So again, I just want to be clear that our objective is to get 3 athletic fields to serve the needs of the transit station area, that they don't
We
have
want you to succeed.
I know
We're
you
here
do.
to help you succeed and do this. The
Okay, well,
concern I think that we feel is that as difficult as it is now to find land for these purposes, it's going to be more difficult in the future because people are going to build things and they go out of use and somebody comes into Isaac Newton and builds on it. So what would make me personally much more comfortable is if you could go and point at the map and say, we're in negotiations, we're talking to this group and that group, and we're going to have a thing right here.
I gotta
And
tell
if
you.
you tell me, well, we're in secret negotiations and we can't talk about that right now, all right, I'll accept that.
That has been,
Well,
I'll
then
tell
come
you.
back in 30 days and
I'll
tell me
tell
where it
you, in
happened.
the discussions with land for athletic fields, those developers have wanted to keep those discussions private because the cost of land automatically has been escalated.
Someone gets wind that they want to buy the land for an athletic field, they raise the price. And
But believe me, from a park authority standpoint, that is the first thing we are trying to look for.
Yeah, you got to knock it down now.
And quite frankly, some of the solutions, the burden that we've tried to do in Reston and are doing in Tyson, and certainly attempting to do it in Reston and Tyson both, is the burden is put on the larger developments to solve that problem.
Okay.
It's not the county going out trying to solve it. It's the developers who will have to solve it. And they can be creative. In Tyson,
But they solve it because you make them solve it.
Yes.
well, again, they're
Yeah.
challenged to solve it. The borough, which is the development that's under construction now on Route 7, was originally part of SAIC.
Okay.
They solved their athletic field by taking another site that had an SAIC building on it, that they converted into a data center and took the surface parking and converted that, in the process now, converting it to an athletic field and building a parking structure to handle the parking. That can be an approach that could happen in the Reston area. We don't know where it's going to happen, and that's why when you say, well, I want you to point us someplace on a map and show me. Right now, we can't, but I can tell you that bright minds are trying to figure out where on that
All
map.
right,
that is.
if we come back a year from today, will you be able to point to it on a map?
Well, I
2
don't-
years, 5 years?
So it's a
20 years.
negotiation process with the rezoning applicants.
Okay.
And we've been very successful to date doing it in Tyson's, and we are starting to see success in Reston. I can't point to places on the map for you right now, but rest assured, we are looking at a number of different locations, and it will happen. It's just, it takes
Can you
time.
give us a off the cuff, not going to hold you to it, just to give us a little sense of in a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, that you'll be able to talk about this?
A year or two, perhaps.
A
I
year
mean,
or
it's
two?
all development driven, so we
Right.
can't do it until we see the
Right.
development proposal. But I'll give you a where, when, how, and happening for how we're looking at where we would improve fields, and that we're moving forward. So, but it's still based on when the actual dollars come in.
Right.
So let's talk about proffer. So as Andy said, that we get the developer commitments as part of the proffers, but they're all time based on the development.
Okay.
So, it comes in over time. So that money actually comes to the Land Development Services Department in the county. That's who's the collection agency, because they collect it as however proffers
bonds and
are ready.
agreements.
Okay, and there's a bag of money that says Reston on the back.
Right, and it's here, it
How
can't
much
go,
is in there
yeah,
now?
they put it in
I've heard
the
this
fund.
figure before. 10 million or something?
So,
10 million's there now.
10 million.
you know, as that money comes in, they then, at the next fiscal year, they come to the park authority and say, we're ready to transfer this funding to you, if the proper says to come to the park. So that's the lag time between, so,
Let me,
That's fine.
well, let me, I want to finish mine.
because I think there's a commitment to 10 million.
Right.
It's not there yet.
Right.
Yes.
It's a commitment.
Ah.
But again, this is meant to offset development that's happening in the future.
Right.
What about the
The-
development that's happened already?
Then if it's happened already, then their contribution has already been made. But what we're talking about is we've entitled development that hasn't happened. And the way that it works is when you get your occupancy permits, that's when the money would come in. It's not paid up front.
Fred, we've all seen the list of what's coming. We all know
And
that.
there-
We all know that a lot is already
What I'm
coming.
trying to
A lot's already
clarify, what I'm
here.
trying to clarify is that the money comes in over time, development comes in over time. It's not all upfront,
Right.
so
Yeah.
that people don't
We
think that they
understand
have
that.
10 million to go out and start.
And there's a little bit of lag time between when the money actually the check gets written to the county and actually gets appropriated into the budget.
Walk out of this building in any direction and you will see completed projects. in the
So
last
the
3
10
years.
million I'm talking about is projects approved under the new Reston plan that was
So you have a
approved.
commitment, but not the cash.
So when was the plan?
Has any cash
Yes,
come in
it-
in 2015?
So in 2015, when the new plan was approved with this new comprehensive plan guidance, I'm talking about a dozen or so rezoning applications that have been approved since 2015 under the new plan. The commitments for 10 million with each building. As each building gets built and occupied, a portion of money will come to the county.
So how much have we got in the bank?
None of them have been built and occupied yet.
So Comstock and Aperture and.
They were under the old
and
plan.
all of that was before.
Under the old plan.
Okay, so when does the first one come in? 3 years? Something's happening.
Bill,
Well, you probably got something with secrets, right?
I see you're just dying to say something, and I know we're not supposed to do this, but if you got a very short interjection that provides the facts, that'd be great.
I'm on the P&Z committee,
Okay?
and within the
Several
last
folks.
4 months, I would say, and Tammy can confirm this, I can think of 3 developers who've said they've identified athletic fields, but they won't say where. Well, that's all I can say,
Right.
because I don't know any more details, but they have said that they are working on it. And that one of them has identified where, and the other, but it's not very far along, but it's identified where. The other 2, we don't know where, but they have said, and I take them in good faith, they've identified something in the corridor. That's as much as they'll say.
And we've had those discussions.
I'm sure you
All right,
have.
since we've
And I
already
have,
broken it,
and I
Pam.
do know where, and it's not in the corridor. It's not within walking distance, and there's no transit to it.
Okay.
And it has maybe parking spaces, but it is not within the TSA.
One of them
All right, I
is, the others I
think,
don't
let's
know.
save some of this stuff for our question period, because we gotta cover a bit of
Okay,
stuff
so,
here.
so let me give you an example where I can say what,
Okay,
how,
that would be helpful.
where, and some close to when, because again, when depends on when the actual money gets in. In the redevelopment aspect, we remaster planned Barron Cameron Park, set up for a more intense use. We are now using, we had bond money in our 2016 bond to go ahead and develop the site plan for that so that it would be all set up and ready to go when we had funding available to actually do the improvements. So there's a how, where, when, and the when part is obviously when funding becomes available. And we're going to set up the plan, site plan, so that we can do that on a phased basis, so that as money is available, we'll start building
That
this.
public document, the phase plan.
It will be, I mean, we're working on it, we just started. The master
You
plan,
see our-
the master
everything-
plan,
all this great stuff, and it's always
Well-
right there, and you can almost touch it, but it-
The
it's
master
not
plan
right
is
there.
already
The
done,
master plan is
and-
available on the county's website,
Well, we
it's
know about
already
the master
approved.
plan.
Yes,
And-
we do.
We're currently working with an engineer to develop the site plan. It's not available yet, but it will be, probably in the next 6 months or a year at the most.
No, nothing today.
Right.
Well, I think that's our concern, because for years, as I said, I've been in Reston since 1979. A lot of changes, mostly good, some bad, but there it is. But everything that we keep talking about is down the road, and I think it would be helpful if you could help us, give us some kind of spreadsheet, check, whatever you got, that basically shows that. I'm not questioning it at all, I'm just saying a lot of things happen. I mean, look, a lot of projects disappear. What happened to Lake Ann? What happened to Tall Oaks? What happened to, all of these places? Then you just start over, and in the meantime, land's gone and it's not available anymore. Somebody new comes in.
Well, that's what Barron Cameron is master planned, and so you can, we master planned it for that reason, so we were ready to go, so that plan is in place. It's not going anywhere. Those athletic fields aren't going anywhere.
So when will they be turfed?
As soon as we have the dollars to actually.
Okay, so we're back, see,
Well, regardless, I'd have to go through a 18-month to 2-year process
Wait, so there was a bond?
to design.
Do you have a bond?
I have bond funding to do the design, to
Oh,
get the
the
site
design.
plan
Oh,
in
not
place.
actually.
And you can't do anything in this county without an approved, even developers can't do anything in this county without an approved site plan.
Yeah. So when will that happen?
That's what we're working on right now.
So by September?
That's probably that's probably an 18 to 24 month to get it all the way through site plan process.
Dennis, can I just ask a friend, can we take a step higher, get a little higher than the umbrella, and just and help me with just education and process? Because I think a lot of it is just a process that many of us are not familiar with, that you work every day. So I think what I heard you say was that, as the developments are occurring and as developers are working these issues, because they know in the plan they got to get to at some point, that the SAIC example you gave, that eventually it's like, oh my God, we got to do something. Hey, we could turn this into a data center, we can use this service park, and we can make this happen. And eventually it got there. In this case, you were saying, how do you watch this? And we have all feel like, yeah, this is going to fall in place at some point. Boston Properties is going to work with JPG, and it's all going to fall in place. But we watch you as our guardian to say, at what point do you gate that stuff and say, hey, there's a gate here now, thou shalt not pass until I see something real, because we're letting it fall in place, Where is that threshold where you say, or the tipping point you say, I'm not confident that I see it occurring anymore, and so I need to gate this and so let Andy do her thing. So tell us that.
I'm hearing two questions.
Okay, then I
One
probably asked
question
you.
is, how do we look at development applications going through the process as they are meeting the athletic field need? So we look at each project. If the project is generating the need for a full field, we look to them to give us, well, where is that full field? That's what Andy and her staff do on development applications. And those development applications aren't just reviewed by staff, they're reviewed by the community. The P&Z, the community, everybody has a chance to look at those applications. And look at those applications in detail. If you think it needs a dog park, say it needs a dog park. But again, each one that's generating that need, we would look for them to solve the problem. What we don't dictate is how they solve it. So if a development has X million square feet of office and residential, it generates the need for an athletic field, then we ask them to come to us with their solutions. Sometimes they bring multiple solutions. It could be everything from, option one is, if I can't find a place off-site, I'll put it on my site. If I find a place off-site, it'll be large enough to do X, Y, and Z, and it will be delivered as my project is delivered. But again, that remedy, like the borough did with SAIC, they came in initially and said, okay, we will do it off-site, and we control this property, so we can do it here. And we then work with them on how we could get it into that location. There are places, West Group had a lot of land, so they were able to dedicate an athletic field first because they had a lot of land. It was away from where their project is being developed, but it's still within Tysons. The Elcor development within Tysons came in with multiple multifamily buildings. Originally wanted to do a green, a community green. We said, no, you're generating the need for an athletic field, and they redesigned it so that it's a full-size athletic field approved with their development.
Is it built yet? No, because they've only built 2 buildings. At some point, it will trigger them building that athletic field.
Okay.
Building 6.
Can I-
Yeah, well, just to wrap her up.
Yeah,
So
just a
that's the process that we go through. And
So-
again, the small sites that don't generate a need for a full-size field, what we're getting is a contribution that will help us do the improvements to some of the existing.
And again, I'm gonna just a quick follow on then to Larry, and I guess that's the question we have then is, they're dumping $10 million that, you know, is going in because maybe they were too small to need one themselves and there's money going in. At what point do you say, gosh, we're there now, I've got to use that $10 million before we do any more, you know, so or we've got to identify the land now before we let the next one go because we've been putting cash together now or whatever it is, or we've got pocket parks. How do we find that contiguous space? How do we use some of this money to build it, you know, at that stage? That's kind of, I think.
Well, what you've heard from Dave and Andy is they are park planners. They will monitor development as it's occurring. They know the money that's coming in, and they are proactively looking at how can we redevelop existing fields. They said initially, we're open to working with Reston Association to see if there's some opportunities on their fields.
Schools?
Or school fields.
We paid, Park Authority took Park Authority money and paid to do the practice field at South Lakes High School. So that there were 2 fields there so the community would get use of the practice field.
I think there were a lot of groups that contributed to
Yeah.
that, and certainly you were one of them.
Specifically, no, I paid specifically for the practice field.
So using the example that you were just talking about, Fred, you know, one of the concerns, and this has been brought up by me and others at like P&Z and so forth. The best example in Reston is Reston Crescent at 36 acres, the largest single rezoning other than Reston Town Center North. At some point that will do something, where it's very proximate to the town center metro station. And I know that may still be in discussion, and I've noticed the progression of the proffer language over time, where initially it didn't really address ball fields, and now there's 3 options there.
2.
Only 2 now?
2 now.
Okay.
And it's been recommended for approval by the Planning Commission.
Okay. So, you know, that's an example of, you know, the large landowner that's generating 4+ million square feet in total development and build out, where, you know, the community says, hey, that's probably the single best opportunity in Reston because of the size of the land bay and the ability to configure that land correctly. And I guess my question is, how involved are you, Andy, and the rest of the Reston core team, you know, all the groups doing the review, saying you gotta put it there because that's the opportunity in Reston. The other one probably is Osmond Square, but you know, how much are you pushing that on the community's behalf? Because we don't have the opportunity to do that unless we, you know, compounding at P&Z or to John or something like that. You know, and those are the examples where the community feels like we're being passed by in some way, shape, or form.
So we've been working with that developer for almost 2 years, telling them they should build a field on site, showing them how they could do it, showing them, you know, what we expect, and they've come back with various versions of their plan. They did show us where they could put a field on site, but it was small. And it could accommodate youth play, maybe up to 8-year-olds. And we said, no, we need a big, full-size field to meet the needs of all ages, all different sports. And they proposed to purchase 7 acres for us off-site where we could provide a better facility, more facilities for the community. So they do have an option in their plan. The third option was to build that small on-site field. And we said that's just not enough. So they have 2 options now. One is to purchase and dedicate to the county 7 acres off-site. And the other is to find another place in Reston and build a full-size field and give it to the county. So
Is that the 100 mil one you were mentioning?
the first
earlier?
option is
First
100
option, 100 mil. Okay.
So understanding too how youth groups are set up, there is no youth group I know of in the county that it's just this neighborhood. You know, the soccer groups are large, they cover multiple neighborhoods, so specifically putting one field here doesn't necessarily satisfy their you know, it's not like every kid that's in that neighborhood is going to play on that. So what we really said when we looked at the transit-oriented, it'd be a shame to have a transit-oriented development and not be able to ride the metro to get to park facilities. And then we said the same thing in Tyson's. But from an overall use standpoint, any field in the Reston area is going to be used by Reston kids or Reston adults, because that's how the groups are set up, and that's how the fields are permitted and out.
You have the authority, 36 acres is a pretty big chunk of land for downtown Reston, if you will. You have the authority to simply say, we only want to see plans that involve a full-scale athletic facility in those 36 acres. Figure it out and come back and talk to us. I mean, can you say that, or is that a political issue?
You could say it, but the comp plan didn't say it. And there was a lot of discussion about that at the comp plan stage. And a decision was made not to mandate that an athletic field be developed at the town center. And I can tell you, as a professional planner, there are not many who would suggest that the best utilization of land adjacent to a mass transit station like Metro is for a large athletic field that is meant to bring in people from other places around the area to play sports in an area where you really want to create activity around the Metro station. So in some respects, it's not the best use of land adjacent to a Metro station.
Is this adjacent? I'm just curious. It seems like it's a healthy
What
height in the summer.
36 acres are you talking about?
Can you speak
Right
up?
across the street. Isn't it?
Reston
The
Crest.
Reston Crest is-
Where
Really,
the
right across the
Wegmans, where the
street from
Wegmans is
here.
going?
Yeah.
Where the Wegmans is going, yes.
Again, that's adjacent to the town center station.
But what do you consider adjacent?
Well,
It's in the middle, it's in the
It's
middle of the toll
it's
road,
a,
so.
it's a reasonably short walk without crossing any major roadways, which I think makes it very proximate to a Metro station.
Okay. All right, my broader question, and I apologize, put your hands up if you can't hear us, because I do think it's important that you guys listen in on this. More generally, I just use that as an example, but in the planning process, as you see, some of our frustration is just, there's lots of commitments, but no there there. Are you able to just basically say, we need a full-scale athletic field, find one for us, and maybe if it's not in the 36 acres, maybe it's...
Yes.
Yes.
That's exactly
That's
what
what
we
we
said
said.
to them.
All right, so
We
why
were
haven't
not
they-
able to get to a staff report with a recommendation for approval to the planning commission until the applicant put some options in the proffers that demonstrate they are committed to providing
A
the county with a
full-scale
field.
athletic facility.
If the,
So
if the
that's
size,
the option.
if their size of their development
Yeah.
actually
If they're
meets the
generating-
requirement.
Yes,
I understand.
that's exactly what we're doing.
So why don't you have it?
Well, because
It hasn't
we
been
explained that it's all phased with development. The
But
need
again-
for the field is generated by the new development, and as the new development is built, the county will be receiving
Well,
these
I guess
commitments
to
to
answer this
offset that.
question is, we've just finally gotten a proposal that actually requires a full, got to the planning
Right.
level that meets the requirements for a
Right.
full-size athletic field.
Right.
Okay. And I think what you can take away from this meeting is that the community, correct me if I overstate this, would be fully supportive of you taking those positions.
Well, we,
So-
Thank
and
you.
so are we,
That we
yes.
take.
Well, see, then we have-
I don't like to get beat up by
I like
developers
it
and
when
then
the
they say
community
nobody else in the
supports us.
community wants this, when we know that that's not the case.
It helps us when
Brad,
the
is that all right?
community supports us.
You live with that?
Good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have an area of agreement then. And I'm hoping to see results quickly. We got a number of things to cover, and as fascinating as all this is, I think we need to move on. So let me wrap up, make sure I understand. On the what you're planning is to upgrade existing fields, that will satisfy part of it. You're also looking for additional new fields, both in the TSA area and
Is
outside.
that just three? Just
Three
three?
in the-
And the rest will
A
be
minimum
other
of 3.
Minimum of 3, yes,
Okay.
thank you. Very good, thank you. And the others would be a combination of the upgrades and new land. that you-
And let me just say, from a staff point, if somebody offers us land that we don't own that will accommodate athletic facilities,
Okay.
as part of the Reston process, our mouths are,
All right, that's good.
you're gonna see saliva coming out of our.
All right, so the
Because land is hard to come by.
So where is tied into this, and again, the only point I would make is that what as difficult as it is now, it's going to be more difficult. in
And
a
we
year.
wholeheartedly understand
So
that,
we
because
need
we've
to
been in those discussions.
Lock things down now. On the money, you have commitments, but no money yet. So when, hopefully at some point soon, there will actually be money that can do some of these other things, but at the moment, you have no money. And lastly, you have an agenda, but you have no time commitments. You can't tell us this will happen in 2020, this will happen in 2022.
Let me just modify it. We did spend county bond money to do the design work.
That we're doing right now.
To be
You started it.
prepared for how to implement the
800,000.
profit money that's gonna come in. And that's not an insignificant
Okay.
No,
expenditure, nor.
and having the site plan approved is a big step in being able to immediately implement it when the funding is available.
That's almost $1 million of county funding towards planning for that park.
Great, let's go taxpayer money.
So I have one question on the 9 outside facilities that you talked about. So existing, including existing ones. So one is Barron Cameron. Any other fields that you can identify now?
There's some other options at Lake Fairfax that we have available,
Okay.
It's not Reston, but okay.
Okay.
but used
Reston
by the same,
adjacent.
that's the community that gets the
That's
use of those
community
fields.
that uses-
Anything else that you're thinking
Uh,
about
we
besides?
We're looking at school sites. I don't know if you wanted to mention.
We have Reston,
Is that a
the other
distance?
parks we have in the general area that have fields that could be up, Reston North Park is an area that can be done at. South Lakes Drive, it will be a community struggle, but we have a facility at South Lakes Drive Park. I don't know if Larry Hunter's Woods has a field that's just a grass field at RA that we actually built on behalf of RA. They gave us the funding and we built it for them.
One
Yeah, well, as you know, like Newport lighting the soccer field there, you will have issues that probably.
The other thing I can tell you now with the change, so LED lighting for athletic fields has finally reached the point where it's actually cost effective. It's more than cost effective. And it totally has changed the impact of athletic field lighting off the fields. So
And the
anytime
community
if somebody
would be
would,
well served, the community would be well served to listen and learn and observe some demonstrations of this new lighting. The community would be well served to be open-minded.
yes, and I would be more than welcome to come and do a presentation and bring some experts with me because I'm a consumer.
You have a field and you could say.
Well, we do have fields, but I mean, I also could bring the experts that can tell you the technical details. I'm a consumer, not the technical, well, I know a lot about the
People want to
technical
stand there and look at
pieces,
it.
but again, from, I'm a consumer as in a buyer of the facilities.
All right, well,
I can even bring, if somebody ever wants to put that on for the community.
Let's see if we can march through some of these things a little more quickly.
So I think
Some
we've
of
answered
this-
some of these.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of this that may not involve you directly. A big issue for us here is the indoor athletic facility. As you probably know, Hunterville is the only district that does not have one. It's been promised for a long time. In theory, it's going to be in Town Center North, but we haven't seen that committed. So I don't even know if this is your area or Fred,
yes.
or you can talk about it, or
No,
you
I
can talk about it.
I
Go
can
ahead.
start and Fred can add anything once. We just finished a study of our rec center facilities, and one of the recommendations was as the community builds up in Reston.
I think we're built. I think we're built up.
You have
70,000 people.
60,000 people.
You already have a.
Well, I think actually,
same thing. It's not
I
a
just
rec
want to
center.
suggest that everybody who's passionate about parks, you really should look at the Park Authority's master plan and their needs analysis and the market study that they just completed. Because
Okay, we'll do that.
the Hunter Mill
Let's-
District facility is in
Let's
there.
hold this stuff until we get to the end, because I'm going
It's
to give a lot of
the
time for
indoor-
everybody to talk.
the indoor
and so
recreation
let's
center
hold
is
that.
listed
Having been
there.
chastised yesterday for making a comment for the field, let's hold on, and you'll have an opportunity at the end.
Okay.
So please,
So
stay.
And we have to look at how that affects the Reston Community Center facility, because again, they're somewhat market-based.
Well,
So
we've been promised a 50-meter pool, we've been promised all these other things, and that's what we want.
So we as the Park Authority are tasked by the Board of Supervisors to be able to run our facilities at no operating costs back to the county. So we have to look on a market basis on what we do with our rec center, so we're very careful.
Okay, but again, the what, where, how, and when, and
So-
show
so-
them
Can you
any
repeat that?
progress.
Can you
Give us some
repeat
good
that?
news.
So,
No recourse in terms of operating costs back to the county.
right, so we generate 100% of our operating costs.
from
All rec centers
For-
are
from our-
revenue
from our
generating.
fees,
all of them,
themselves.
Oakmar,
Yeah.
Springfield?
Well, it's
Spring Hill.
generated as a pool, so if we have one that's not quite making it, we have to make up for, it's,
I don't think that'll be a problem.
So your cost recovery is 100% from
that
those
is
facilities?
not for capital, but. for-
Yeah, for all non-operating, and,
Operating.
not the capital and debt
Yeah,
service.
take a look at that. Is it all broken out in the FCPA financials?
Well,
By
actually, you
facility?
can go look at we just finished a whole study on our rec center program in general, so you can see it all there, it's on
Okay.
the web.
But again,
And
nothing
yes,
definite, nothing firm.
and yes,
Good
and-
intentions. I trust you guys.
and
We're
when we
working
were
hard at
looking
it, but nothing yet.
And when we were looking at Reston Town Center North and that redevelopment plan, and the Park Authority was part of that discussion, that was one of the areas where we identified, and as part of our Bear and Cameron, in the community discussions with Bear and Cameron master plan, we identified as, if we're gonna build a rec center in Reston, this is probably one of the prime locations to put it.
I think the chairman has promised that, so let's
So
hope
it
he does.
But Reston Town Center North.
Yes, so
Yes,
that's
yes,
why
yes,
it was,
okay.
and we incorporated that agreement with the county on the county, and giving up some of our park property with the county, is that would be one of the things that we would reserve development rights for as part of that Reston Town Center North development.
Dave, isn't that, there is an MOU to that effect?
But clearly, let's, if you could please, I mean, we have to be fair to everybody, because I'm sure most of the people out there have a comment or a question too. So just hold it till the end, and then you can have your say, okay?
So again, the desire to put a rec center in Reston, a Park Authority rec center, is there. It's timing and making it work market-wise.
That's-
And meeting all our other county demands.
Well, we've been waiting, I would say patiently, but I'm not sure all of us are as patient as others, so there that is. Let me kind of shift it a little bit, because one of the things that comes up.
Can I just
Yeah,
add
of course.
an aside for Reston Town Center North?
Yeah.
We're in the process, the county was in the process of trying to take through a conceptual plan, and I believe met with the community regarding grid of streets that's shown in the comp plan, which is integral to rearranging some of the land that the Park Authority owns so that it can be developed with something like an indoor athletic facility. So some of the concern that I've heard about in the community about not wanting a grid of streets and not being supportive of the concept that's in the comp plan, the adopted plan for Reston, is undermining the ability to move forward with that proposal.
Well, you lost that parcel behind the library there. I know that's going to give you some
That's
extra work.
that's always been a private property.
Okay, grid of streets, wonderful, love it. We'll ride full speed ahead as far as I'm concerned.
It would help.
Except for one street.
Except for one. We're going to get, that's the next item.
I think it would help for the community to galvanize around some of these areas, because what we're getting is.
Right. Look, one of the things, and we keep talking about the master plan, one of the things that literally comes up dozens and dozens of times is the connectivity for bicycles and pedestrians. Now, if you ask people what is unique about Reston, why are we different from McLean, from Chantilly, from all of these things, I think you would say we have a pathway system that connects up basically the entire community. The plan, original plan on this, was to have non-at-grade crossings. So we have tunnels of at least one overpass along the way. They work great. Yesterday, we all sat in here and talked about the traffic backup. Part of the reason we have traffic backup is because we have 47-second walk across intervals on major roads. Now, what perhaps you could educate me on is why, for instance, do we have a development at Wheelie, but we do not have a non-at-grade crossing across Wheelie and Sunset Hills? I mean, why didn't we put a tunnel or a bridge there?
When we went through the planning process,
And everywhere else.
that issue was discussed.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, while there are some who talk about the advantages of separating the pedestrian from the traffic in terms of roadway crossing, they have not worked out well in most places.
They worked out well in Reston.
Well, I
They
don't
worked out
believe-
well in Reston.
I'm not sure that.
I can tell you they do. Look, I'm a Reston runner. We run every week. We work to go through the tunnels and the overpasses. Why? Because we don't want to get killed by a car. And 2 people have been killed, pedestrians have been killed within
I'm
stone's
sorry.
throw.
Let me try to answer the question.
Please.
and then we
I'm
can-
hoping you can.
I know you started off by saying you wanted to have a spirited back and forth.
And that's what I
dialogue.
like. You know it.
And I think we're having it, but I think if I can at least try to say, when we went through the planning process,
The thought in Reston was, one of the things you have to do is, one, there was not a desire to widen roads or put in extra turn lanes. They wanted to make the roads easy to cross for pedestrians. And it also calms traffic. It slows traffic down. If you separate the pedestrian, then there really is no reason not to have the traffic moving faster through the area, which quite frankly is not the environment that you're trying to create.
You lost me. Usually you make very great sense on
I would
everything. You lost me on this
I
one.
would suggest visiting places like Roslyn, Boston, Virginia Square, and say, would those areas be improved if you had pedestrian crossings above each of those roads? The other thing
They aren't Reston.
The other thing I will suggest is, we now have the ADA requirements such that the crossing at Wheelie Avenue, you could not do that today because the ramps would not be ADA accessible. So you have to have a much longer lead-in. And if you want to see what that looks like, look at what the W and OD will do at Wheelie. The run-up to get people across traffic. Tunneling works in some instances where the topography works. There's a tunnel on the Coats Neck, there's a tunnel on the Reston Parkway, but I'm telling you,
Well,
retrofitting these areas with tunnels,
talk about it.
making the ramps and the grades ADA accessible would be detrimental to the physical environment of Reston.
I have a question about the ADA that someone in the community asked me about at a meeting in the last few months when they, for the first time, were looking at the W&OD trail overpass, and a little too late for his question for that one, I'm afraid. But the question was, well, why not put in a simple elevator thing?
Exactly.
And when you think of simple elevator, just my reference is Miami Beach, old Miami Beach, all these old hotels and such. Many of them have put in these little, it's just you get in, you operate it yourself, you go up the one, you go up and you're out, and it apparently can hold up to the salt air. They must be somewhat simple. They
It's wide enough for a wheelchair.
well, yes, it's for a wheelchair.
Right.
It's how they're getting some of the historic buildings ADA accessible to at least their first floor. And I just wondered, couldn't we do that here with some overpasses?
Well,
I realize sometimes that might not work, but
I think
most of the time they
you'd be
would.
creating one, a facility that would cost. There would be two, who's going to maintain and operate that facility? Because typically, again, I don't know if RA is in
Not right now.
the business.
Well, the roads are VDOT or
But
They
I
can't even maintain
I cannot
it.
imagine that the state is going to take on managing and maintaining elevators at great cost.
So I can tell you, they told what they told
So
us.
typically, when something like that comes in, it can be done, but it has to be done with somebody coming in and saying, I will be responsible for the maintenance, upkeep of that type of facility.
Tunnels and overpass provide safety for bicyclists and for pedestrians. They provide much more efficient vehicle flow because you don't have to have these long periods where there's
I
nobody
have no
there.
argument about the benefit of tunnels and bridges in certain locations. All I'm suggesting that you do is identify places in the transit station areas where you think that transit station area would benefit. I'm not talking about, yes, there are places, Edmund Haley Drive and Metro starts. Do you want to have that? There'll be a lot of traffic going to the Metro station. Reston Station Boulevard, next to Comstock. Do you think that that's a place where you'd want to have a bridge or a tunnel? Again, a lot of places have implemented bridges and tunnels. They tend to work for joggers and bikers. But people who walk want to take typically the shortest distance. And when you build a tunnel or a bridge,
No. Okay. All right, we're not.
I just want to, I brought this up at a P&Z meeting, I'll throw it out here since you all didn't hear that. The best example in the TSA, near a metro station, that would work, because of the topography is already there, is the Campus Commons, crossing Wheelie over to the Vornado Smith property at the south entrance of the town center.
right.
The Campus Commons property, they've shown this kind of park thing coming off Wheelie. And their proffer, I believe, is if VDOT will allow us, we'll put in a designated crosswalk across Wheelie. when in fact they're 20 feet below grade at their low parking spot at Campus Commons, and it's about 10 or 12 feet below grade over on the Reston or the Vornado property. That is an example where the topography would allow it right out of the chute, and it was, I can't remember who the developer is on Campus Commons, but they said, well, we'll take a look at that. Because otherwise, it's that what they have proposed is for those people to come out, get on Sunrise Valley, walk over to Wheelie, walk up Wheelie, and then maybe there'll be a crosswalk if VDOT allows it. There's already so much activity on Wheelie. So I would just ask.
Again, I don't believe that project has not gone through the process.
Correct.
And
But they did come to P&Z with some, with their concept plans. And so, there's an opportunity for what Dennis is saying would work because the topography is there.
Yeah, I don't disagree with looking for opportunities where the opportunities may exist. But I'm just saying that some of those things are challenging. I remember we looked at Reston Parkway, trying to figure out ways to have a convenient connection across Reston Parkway down by the toll road. And people came up with many different solutions to try to solve it. But again,
we've had 2 casualties, and when we have 3 or 4 more, then all of a sudden it'll become a priority. And all I'm asking is that you start with the thought of, let's find a way to do this. Some things it may be impossible, but there's more often than not. And again, this is what makes Reston Reston. This is Reston, is an ability to walk from one end of Reston to the other without having to risk life and limb crossing a major road. That's a good thing. And the ADA stuff is important. We work on that. That's one of our committees. We believe in this stuff. But we can make it work because we want it to work. So let's get to that, and we don't have to beat this to death. Anybody last comment? Anybody on this issue?
No, let's get.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Lynn, you're up.
I have these handouts for you all. I'll just.
Can you hear?
Fred, you've seen.
No.
So what we're doing is we're talking about
Stand up, perhaps, please.
the road from nowhere.
You guys can sit
Is
down.
the next item on the agenda. And we have been, Reston Association, the Coalition for a Planned Reston, have been requesting, we're trying to figure out where the road came from, first of all. But the thing that we have been requesting is that it be removed from the grid of streets because it encroaches on Hidden Creek. I'll just give you all this, you can pass it around.
Right. This has been discussed
So-
in the transportation meeting.
It's in the
I
middle of
can't-
so
open
this
space,
is
so
there
I'm asking
too.
you to comment, we're just bringing it up.
So what you're looking at is kind of so this shows Hidden Creek Country Club. This is between North Shore and Sunset Hills. It's very close to Isaac Newton Square. What we've been told is that when the county was developing the grid of streets, someone, they don't know who did it, but someone was trying to figure out how to eliminate the congestion at the intersection of Wheelie and Sunset Hills. So somebody just drew a line from Isaac Newton Square, which is north of Sunset Hills, to American Dream Way, which, by the way, is a private road. So we have looked at this, and as early as November the 17th, 2017, Reston Association included the request to Supervisor Hudgens. This was item number 8, to initiate an amendment to the Reston plan to remove the grid of streets road connection between American Dream Way and Isaac Newton Square because it would adversely impact environmentally sensitive areas and the Hidden Creek Golf Course. Now, where the road is planned is that there's actually not enough room between the boundary of Hidden Creek Country Club and the Washington Old Dominion Trail. I think Dennis went out and measured and said it was about 14 and a half feet
5 inches, 14 feet, 5 inches.
Oh, 14 feet, 5 inches. The next request came, and this was from the Coalition for a Planned Reston, in their proposal to Supervisor Hudgens that was dated February the 5th, 2018. And the key objective was to remove the mapped street between Isaac Newton Square and American Dream Way that are in figures 45 and 46. And I believe that's in the comprehensive plan, which is outside any transit station area and threatens the preservation of Hidden Creek Country Club Golf Course. Next, at the Board of Supervisors hearing, and this was a public hearing of Fairfax County Board of Supervisors on February the 20th, Reston Association's then CEO, Kate Fulkerson, provided testimony requesting that this road be removed. And then finally, March 28th, Fred Selden provided feedback to Supervisor Hudgens, and there was quite a bit of text there, but the net is, he said, as with any new roadway design, the county will work to minimize negative impacts on existing uses such as the golf course and the environment. In our view, the planned road being shown as part of the conceptual street network does not negatively affect the viability of the Hidden Creek Golf Course. Well, I had a video that I was hoping that I could show because we did have a drone that went up and looked, and we mapped that path from Isaac Newton Square to American Dream Way, and I can assure you, it does impact environmentally sensitive areas. Colvin Run, there is a wildlife habitat in that area, and it does impact Hidden Creek. So we are continuing to ask that this road be removed from the conceptual grid of streets, and we're wondering when that might happen.
Let me respond in the sense of, it is a conceptual grid. It is a concept, not a planned roadway. There's a very different distinction in the comp plan. When it's a planned roadway, it means that we are going to take affirmative efforts to try to get that roadway built. When it's conceptual, it's meant to be, this is a possible way to address future circulation and traffic in the area. And one of the things that the comp plan did in the transit station area was to provide a grid of streets which should give people alternative ways to move in the area without getting on the main roadway. And at Wheelie Avenue and Sunset Hills Road, if you can provide an alternative path around that congested intersection, that could be a benefit. The way it's shown and the way we tried to articulate in the response on March 23rd, which again, while it had my signature, it was a staff response which had staff from FCDOT weighing in on it. The conceptual grid is one that would not be implemented unless it's needed as a part of the redevelopment of Isaac Newton Square. If that development can be done without that linkage, then it will be done without the linkage. If the linkage is needed, there are two things that can happen. One, you scale back that development so that link isn't needed. Or two, the developer of Isaac Newton Square would have to figure out how to make that linkage happen. We've said any number of times the county would not go in and try to build that connection or try to facilitate that connection. Lastly, you said the reference to a planned road doesn't affect the viability. And again, I apologize because when we use the term planned road, we just mean a road that conceptually is on the comp plan. It doesn't affect the existing viability of the golf course because nothing has been built, nothing has gone through a process that would build it. And again, the only way that that would get built would be for the county to initiate action that would take, one, an affirmation that that was something that the county or FCDOT or VDOT would do, which hasn't happened and won't happen, or
Or a private development application would come in, and they would need to make that connection happen, would mean they would have to negotiate with the golf course, they would have to figure out how it would happen.
Question for you, please. So you are very clear in that, first of all, it was all conceptual, right? And so you might ask the developer that comes with a plan that requires that linkage to scale back, right? So that's an option. Second option, you're saying that they have to come up with a solution. The plan is very clear that there will be 2 golf courses, 2 full golf courses. Why can't you just take the road out of this conceptual, even on a conceptual basis, and see what the developer comes up with for the Isaac Newton Square? Why even have this hanging over that, with all creating all this confusion? What is preventing you from doing that? Because if it's so far down the line, and you're going to ask them to come up with other options, why haven't you?
I think that gets into the question of what modifications do we make to the comp plan? Because the way that you'd have to do that would be you'd have to amend the comp plan to take that road off, that figure.
Brad, you're very good at
That would be
this.
great.
You almost think you believe it.
Yeah.
But look, this ties into the fact, I would say the community, are very, very appreciative of everything that the county has done and did do to help preserve the national golf course. I mean, the county played a very important role, RA played a very important role, the community played a very, so we thank you for that. As you know, there are 2 golf courses in Reston, and the Reston master plan calls for these open space specifically as a 2 golf course community. So what I'm asking is, can we count on the county to provide the same level of support in defending both golf courses as we have seen with the first golf course that came up?
Again, I think we reiterated in the comp plan, we were very clear that they're planned to be golf courses.
Okay,
Treated-
so
I'll
I'm taking
go
that
back
as a
to-
yes, and
I'll go back to
I'll
the-
stop right there because that's the answer I wanted, and I'm very happy with it.
Well, if I could just add one more thing.
All
So
right.
it is my
Don't push it too
understanding.
hard, we got him.
No, but it is my
This is the plan.
understanding, it is
We
my
didn't do the research.
understanding.
We didn't do the research
that-
or any of the background on the Hidden Creek, so I can't even speak to what.
All right,
You know,
go ahead,
it is
go
my
ahead.
understanding that any developer that is coming in for building along that area, on Wheelie, so anywhere between
I said
Isaac
Newton Square.
Newton and American Dream Way, has to incorporate that conceptual road into their plans. So I think that it's a bit disingenuous for developers or builders to have to accommodate this conceptual
Let me-
road in their
let me
planning.
clarify something.
Okay.
That road is an off-site road. Okay? So typically, a development application can only control what's within the bounds of its application. It cannot effectuate something that's off-site without the agreement of the off-site parties. So I can tell you the complication of trying to get all of that to happen, I think is very, very highly unlikely, and that's what we've tried to articulate. But again, when Isaac Newton Square comes in, they are not obligated to build that conceptual link because they don't control that land. And I think there's another property that's in that may also be somewhat in the triangular piece.
The
fire
golf
station.
overlook? Golf
Yes.
course overlook?
Right.
And when it's been withdrawn, but they were having to show how they would connect to this conceptual road.
But to connect-
Which was
to
hard
connect to
because
the-
there's a big
connect to the
canyon there.
east. I don't think they were being asked to connect to the
No,
west.
to the west?
I think they were being asked to connect to the
Oh,
east.
I don't understand.
Well, I also believe that the fire station that is being redesigned and redeveloped has to incorporate a rear exit to this conceptual road in their plans.
That's how we implement a grid of streets.
But the road
again,
is- the road
that
is
would be on,
disingenuous.
that would be on
It
their
cannot
site.
descend hills like it does.
Yeah, I think, basically, Fred, this is an irritant, and we don't understand
get
why we can't just get rid of it and move on to more important things. But I'm gonna ask if anybody at the table has another issue that they feel they need to bring up right now, then I'm going to wrap up, and then we're going to go to questions. You have
Just
something to say?
one quick point. We are in the middle of 2018. Any development for Isaac Newton Square is many years down the line. You can amend the comp plan by 2020. That's a 5-year point. We are at the 5-year point to look at the comp plan, right? That is by 2020. Well before any developer comes forward with a proposal for Isaac Newton Square.
I don't know when that could happen tomorrow if somebody wanted to file an application tomorrow.
We don't have one yet, so
No.
I'm just saying that by the time you get there, you have enough time to actually make the change, and I think everybody will support me in asking for that change. That's it.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, again, anything from the panelists, if you will, to bring up at this point? Then, first off, because we could probably get pushed out the door here, let me thank our friends from the county for coming, and we hope you understand we're all on the same side. What we want is for you to succeed. We're here to help you succeed. Believe it or not, we're from the federal government. I'm here to help you. Yeah, that's out there. I do want to kind of quickly go over what I think we have agreement on before we get to the questions. We certainly have agreement about the uniqueness of Reston. We have agreement that development will be phased in with infrastructure. We have the public participation is vital and will continue. We're all in agreement on this. We're in agreement that the county supports 2 golf courses in Reston. We're in agreement that you will be working and providing us with some additional information on your timing and placement of the different aspects of what we've been talking about on athletic fields and these sorts of things.
Could you clarify that? I'm not sure.
Well, I think, like me, I had a note here that you were going to provide, 2 things. One, you're going to provide information on turfs and light, just the background information for educational purposes. And then we're going to give a readout on where we stand with the new projects that are down the line. And what I would like would be kind of a spreadsheet, and it would probably have a lot of gaps in it, but basically answering the where, how, when questions along the way. And again, if you have a question mark and you cannot give it because you're in secret negotiations or you just haven't gotten there yet, I understand that. The frustration I think that on this side of the table we feel is we don't doubt your good intentions, we don't doubt your hard work, we don't doubt any of that. What we have trouble with is not seeing anything that we can actually look at and say this has happened or that has happened or this will happen. So settle for will happen. So I leave it to you, whatever you think you can come up with, let's talk about it and we'll take a look. On the planning, Fred and Leslie, you were awful quiet today, that's unusual. Did we offend you or something? Sorry.
No,
Okay, anyway, appreciate your contribution. As I said, I think this is something, it's very different from my other experience in working with other branches of the county government, and I do want to thank all of you, and certainly the supervisor and Goldie, if you're still back there, for everything you do for us here. I just want to say that we appreciate it. Now, I know we have some questions because I cut some off, but first man who had his hand up is over there.
Yes, just 3 quick things. The first one was probably answered, but I couldn't hear it. By the way, I suggest future meetings with PA system.
Would be wonderful.
And that's a different facility.
With the phenomenal increase in population density I've seen proposed, will the 1.5 acre ratio be inviolate so that it cannot be redacted? Is that carved in stone?
Not for you guys.
That's policy. For every 1,000 people, there should be an acre and a half of urban park space.
Okay, that's all right. My last question is the proposed Performing Arts Recreation Center under the aegis of this group?
No. Well, not by me or anybody here. No. I mean, I think they're building one in McLean, I think, so. Yeah.
Okay.
There is supposed to be one. Tammy, did you have a comment?
Well, first of all, the Performing Arts Center and the Indoor Rec Center are
supposed to be
completely 2 different things.
Yes, I know.
Okay, so which were you asking about?
The Performing Arts.
That, according to what we're hearing, there are preliminary plans for that to go in as a proffer from a giant Reston Town Center project, so that's a possibility. The debate is who will operate it, because small tax district number 5 is a limited demographic to handle an immense population.
Because I heard originally it was planned where the recreation center is taken
supposed to go.
over that area where the
Yeah, I'm not
was
sure.
originally
I don't know.
proposed. So-
Good point, thank you. Comments? Questions? Please.
Okay, a couple. First of all, just from the environmental side of things,
Yeah.
I am involved with several environmental groups in Reston. On the crumb rubber, we've had that before the Reston board in an issue related to potential tennis changes and soccer field changes in Reston already. And so far, at least, the Reston position was absolutely no, we don't want crumb rubber in Reston. So please can you please come up with alternatives? If you're talking about upgrading, at least last time it went before the board, crumb rubber was not considered an acceptable upgrade in Reston. It's toxic, and I won't go into all details, but that was the way it came down. Okay. Very briefly on the multimodal that we've gone all over the place with. Links to the pathways, please help find ways to do the following 3 things. Links to pathways, road crossings for the pedestrians and bicyclists. I was at the planning and zoning meeting at one point where the issue of coming across Wheelie Avenue came up, and I don't think we can do that. We can't. The developer, I don't know that we could do that. I see absolutely no excuse for there not being a way to get across Wheelie Avenue. Okay, and then it was briefly mentioned public transportation to fields didn't seem to be a real deal. On the other hand, I'm sure there are people in this county and in Reston for whom public access to the fields is important. They don't all have mothers who are driving them, and so forth and so on. Finally, I'd like to raise the issue. I'm really glad to hear that we're going to have 2 full golf courses. One thing I do not want to see is that some existing recreation areas be transformed into fields. The idea is that we want what we have plus fields, not instead of.
Don't applaud, just throw money.
Fields.
My way.
And
I'll build those things.
finally, on the road, I have listened, I have tried to keep my mind open, I really am trying to hear what you're saying. I still don't get that since we don't have any idea who put the damn, pardon my French, road on the map, like someone can't step up and take it off. Thank you.
Truly mistake.
Can I, before we move on, because I wanted to answer one question when the gentleman raised the rec center, there were some issues, there was some discussion there about it's taking the place of something else. First of all we've done is reserve 90,000 square foot of density on that site. So if that site has more density, we don't necessarily see that needing to be a standalone, just a rec center facility. It could be 2 floors in an office building, it could be 2 floors in another facility. So just so everybody understands that, what we reserved was 90,000 square foot of density, which is the standard size of our rec centers. Okay, so, and we are open to any proposals to have that developed.
Good, great. Tam and John.
From a community standpoint, there are many problems. One, we are told that the TSAs are walkable, and we are told we need 1 field per TSA. We are likely not getting a full-size field in any of the 3. I don't know about Herndon Monroe, that's a possibility, but in the 2 Wheelie and Town Center, where they are, because as Fred said, the developers say, our land is too valuable for us to make a field there. So that's number 1. We're supposed to be walking to recreation, but their land is too valuable to devote, although they qualify to have to provide it. Another thing is that Reston is a progressive community that's 52 years old, going on 53. And for all that time, most of that time, we have been progressive and provided our own self-funded community center. The programming that Lila's talking about being on the plaza is a program paid for by the taxpayers. It is not a park authority program. It is a privately funded program. So what the park authority does in every other community is they provide programming and they provide an indoor rec center. We have Barron Cameron Field. That is used by Vienna, Great Falls, Reston, and Herndon, for sure. I don't know if Oakton has any usage there or not. But that's a district park. So that is not Reston only. But yet we are throwing the required 12 fields for the Reston TSAs onto that facility and possibly Lake Fairfax by dividing up existing fields into turf fields. My problem is right now with the existing populations of Vienna, Great Falls, Herndon, and Reston, and maybe Oakton, those fields are fully scheduled and they don't provide enough space. So now we're bringing in tens of thousands more residents of the corridor, and we're using a 1.65 multiplier for a turf field versus a grass field. Well, baby, we already need more capacity from the population existing in 2018. When over 40 years we have possibly 60, 80,000 more people here, this is 12 fields in addition to what we have today, and what we have today is not sufficient. And by the way, what we had in 1980 wasn't sufficient when my kid was playing, and we couldn't get a playing spot. So we're behind the curve in providing adequate facilities. This is a huge conversation. I want to also say that as a member of the Reston Planning and Zoning, 2 meetings ago, a veteran person on that panel who served all through the Reston Master Plan said in that meeting, where did the road from nowhere come from? It was not on any map that we ever saw, we never discussed it, and we did not put it on the comp plan. So that is really, we call it the road from nowhere because we have no idea from where it's.
And if I may, I have proof of what she just said in FOIA materials.
As you can see, it's an irritant, and I
Yes.
strongly recommend
Easy
you figure out a way to get rid of
Yes.
this, and then we don't have to talk about it anymore.
Right, so-
Come into
Guys,
the big
wait,
email.
I mean, you're right here, you've been waiting very patiently. Go ahead.
One thing I'd like,
You have to speak up.
Yeah.
I would ask that the Park Authority take a look at. One of the great resources that Fairfax has is Lake Fairfax Park. That park sneaks up behind the McDonald's next to the parking lot that serves the ice rink. And if I happen to cross over somebody's do not enter sign private property, I can get into that park. It is a wonderful park. And I'd ask you to find a way, maybe when the pedestrian bicycle bridge is being built, to create just an access path and make paths. I've seen people walking and people riding bikes. I'd like to have those on separate trails if possible. But really, that would be so valuable to the people, and that would be a cheap add-on.
And we look, every time we get an opportunity with a development to connect like that, we do look. When Lifetime Fitness came out there, we looked, they provided us a connection to
Okay,
the park.
but if you can bring one right up to the wheelie area,
Right.
then
I
I
think
think
that's
that
on the comprehensive plan to make that
There's-
connection.
one of your maps has a little dotted
Yeah,
line,
so-
but nobody knows that
Doesn't
you can
exist.
get to it.
Right, it's planned, so that, it's on the comp plan, so it's something that we should be working to achieve.
Yeah, I just ask that you do that and give it some priority, because I
No,
think
we
that would
agree.
have a real value.
You'll get no disagreement.
Yeah.
Okay.
whatsoever.
Maybe we could have
I think
conceptual
we're
athletic
all in
fields.
on that. Sir?
Just a quick comment on this road to nowhere. I don't know if you mentioned, but to me, it's a violation of the committed integrity of 2 open golf courses.
Yeah.
I mean, hello, I mean, what does it
You're-
take? You can just
you're-
take it off the map. If you don't ask, they can't say no.
Yep, exactly. Okay, other questions, comments, brickbats? What do we got? All right, Andy?
Just a closing comment, I really appreciate, you know, the working together atmosphere and the working together. It's, as Tammy was describing, you know, in the corridor, we have to have open space for people. We have to have ideas, solutions for athletic fields for people, and we have to have transportation to them. And Reston Association, we have a lot of open space adjacent to that I am sure will be utilized by the residents in there. And we have to continue a working dialogue, a monitoring of this as development moves along, because we have to work in sync or it's going to fall apart. And I just appreciate that we continue doing that and create structures, this maybe being the beginning of a structure where we force ourselves to communicate when we're all too busy to do it. We have to continue it so that we link like this and not like this. Okay?
Great.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, last word, Tammy?
And to follow up on what Andy just said, when the comp plan was adopted, Sandy Stallman stood up and said, we only need to have the 3 fields due to the quote, rich tapestry of Reston amenities. Those are privately funded. If and the people coming into the corridor are walking the paths and using the lakes, we have no police force to prevent that. So from a moral standpoint, I would implore the people who are giving the funds and some of the proffers, go to Reston Association, even if the development is not Reston Association members, because we in Reston Association land are paying for the upkeep of this stuff, but non-members are using it. And honestly, I will tell you from next door, people from Oakton are coming over and using our paths. So we know that they're being used by out-of-area people to walk their dogs and to have nature strolls. It's incumbent that a very dense population who has very little open space or natural space in their corridor urban environment have the ability to get out and de-stress on some of these places. But it's also morally, I would say, necessary for the corridor proffers to go to Reston Association to help pay for that, so we all can enjoy it.
As a last point, pick up on that. You know, Reston has a value. There are people, all of these developers want to come to Reston because Reston is Reston. And part of why Reston is exactly that. We have a path system, we have the trees, we have all of these things that don't always exist in other areas around us. And because we are a desirable place and people want to come here, developers want to have buildings in Reston, then we have leverage. We have an ability to say, if you want to come to Reston, you need to buy into the whole package. And buying into the whole package means that you don't ask for every exception possible, so you can come up to the roadside and you can shrink the sidewalks and you can not put underpasses under the road and all that. We have an ability, and when I say we, because I consider you guys our agents and our knights in shining armor, you have an ability to say, this is what we need. If you want to come to Reston, welcome. We'd love to have you here. Here's what it takes to come here. And if we can get to that, we're all good. So, thank you one and all for very good, for your patience. And all.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you. Good, Dave, pleasure. What is that one? We want you guys to do good.
Yeah, no, we want to do good, believe me.